All right, good morning. Today I wanted to go over some of the background materials for the Neanderthal Studies class. The first thing to have a look at is this chronological diagram that gives you an idea of the time scale that we're looking at, some of the ecological conditions that sort of prevailed at certain time periods, and then some of the hominid species and what's going on with these hominids. In all cases, H stands for Homo, so it'll be Homo sapiens neanderthalensis. Sometimes I'll abbreviate that as HSN. AMHSS, as somebody has asked, is anatomically modern Homo sapiens sapiens. That's us, that is modern humans that essentially replace Neanderthals, we'll see later on, somewhere on the order of 30 to 40,000 years ago. And what you see here is that our timeline begins around 500,000 years ago. You saw in one of your articles that the site of Dmanisi on the Black Sea in Russian Georgia has fossils and stone tools dating back to 1.8 million years ago. Now that's very early. We used to think that hominids entered Europe or left Africa only about 1 million years ago. Now that was 20 years ago when I was an undergraduate. We thought, no, it's about 1 million years ago that hominids leave Africa. Completely wrong. It turns out they left almost, probably twice as long ago, 2 million years ago. There are hominid fossils in East Asia dated to close to 2 million, and certainly there's Dmanisi at 1.8 with hominids. There are some other early sites in southern Spain, so in the far east of Europe, in Russian Georgia at 1.8, and southern Spain there are these sites that come up somewhere around 800,000 or 1 million years ago. But these are two sort of flickers of the earliest hominids of Europe. They appear there, but they don't seem to stay for long. And in fact, it's only beginning around 500,000 years ago, 500,000 years ago, as you can see on this time scale, only about 500,000 years ago, that substantial numbers of hominids actually begin to colonize Europe. It could be considered an ecological colonization when sort of viable populations exist over long spans of time in what we consider Europe. So that diagram just gives you some basic ideas of or basic information on the climatic conditions and so on that we know of the hominid occupation of Europe. Now keep in mind that here I say that there are interstadials. These are interglacial periods. That's periods in which it is warm. And in the period of hominid colonization of Europe, it went, beginning around 500,000 years ago, up until the arrival of modern humans 30 to 40,000 years ago. Europe went in and out of a number of ice ages. Now the ice ages began at 1.8 million years ago, and they end only 10,000 years ago when we go into the current warm period, the Holocene. But through that time period there have been many shifts in the climatic regimes of Europe. So have a look at this diagram that shows you the geography of Europe. And with this one, what you can see, I wanted to get you familiar with a couple of the basic features, and really the basic features are this. Essentially, you can divide up the European geography into three major bands: a sort of northern lowland, where you can see that the Alps have drained off and they're pouring all of the melt from the Alps, drains towards the north and into the oceans and water bodies up here. Then there's sort of the Alpine belt, very mountainous right through here, the Alps, northern Italy, Spain, and so on, France. And then a sort of Mediterranean belt, the edges of the Mediterranean. And while the characteristics of these three regions change over the 500,000 years of hominid occupation of Europe, while those conditions change, sometimes there's an ice sheet up here, whereas sometimes the ice sheet has retreated and there is essentially a tundra environment. While those environments have changed, those three sort of climatic bands, essentially based on latitude, but also conditioned to a degree by the actual physiography, the topography of the landscape, these three major bands are important for European prehistory. a northern band, a northern lowland band, a central sort of massif or rocky, mountainous, elevated region, and then, of course, the Mediterranean, the circum-Mediterranean. The circum-Mediterranean has always been, or for a long time it has been, a rather warmer, more sort of oak parkland, hilly parkland environment. In the central, you have these this massif with these mountains and the ice sheets during the ice ages, and then forest later on, and then the lowland plains, open tundra, sometimes ice cap, but open tundra, and also later on mixed forest. The ice sheets during the glacial periods, the ice sheets would have covered all of Britain. They would have reached down as far south as Paris, and they would have covered a great deal of the northern lowland plain. So these are some major physiographic regions to think about when we're thinking about Neanderthal colonization of Europe. Keep in mind that although I said there were a few flickers of early hominids here in southern Spain and a few here in the Black Sea, or on the east side of the Black Sea at 1.8 million, keep in mind that while that's the case, most of the occupation of Europe appears to occur, or the colonization appears to come from the southeast here into the northwest. And there's a constant flow over millions of years of influence physically, geographically, biotically. The plant and animal species even that colonize Europe are oftentimes coming from the southeast here. So places like Turkey, places like Israel, the Levant, the Near East, this area here, these are particularly important for early hominid studies because this is the route by which most of the hominids actually filter into Europe itself.